what projects are currently being developed at the Gershom Scholem collection at the library? What is your favorite work or part of the collection? And what is it that Rabbi Leshem, Dr. Leshem, what do you do as director of this great collection?
Okay, so our biggest project right now, which will not sound very romantic or very content-oriented, is that we are moving to a new building. The National Library, after its being in its current location for the last 63 years, is moving in a few weeks to an unbelievably beautiful and incredibly modern facility that's right near the Knesset and the Israel Museum. And so I have to be in charge of moving 35,000 books, including 4,000 rare books, and making sure they get from the right place on the shelves in the current building to the right place on the shelves in the new building. So that is really right now, by far, the overwhelming project that we're involved in. Everything else is kind of on hold. But other big projects that we've done over the years, and I've been there for 12 years, the projects that we've done that are significant and that I think we'll pick up again once we get resettled. First of all, huge amount of digitation. We've digitized about 3/4 of our over 4,000 rare books, and that needs to continue. We digitized, Scholem kept a card file of a kind of a Zohar Aramaic dictionary in 7,000 file cards, most of them on both sides. You're dealing with almost 14,000 images, which we also digitized. That was a huge project that was very important. We're constantly expanding the collection because it is a research library, so we can't only have the books that Scholem owned when he died 40 years ago. So we're constantly developing and expanding the collection. We do a lot of educational or research work. We sponsored a number of conferences. We had a conference for Sholem's 30th Yortzeit, and last year for his 40th Yortzeit. We've had a number of conferences having to do with Scholem and other figures that he was close to. Scholem and some of his students, Scholem and, for example, a couple of years ago, the Argentinian author Borges, who Scholem met with. There's sort of mutual admiration. So we have a lot of kind of educational, cultural research activities that we're involved in as well. So I would say those are the main things that are happening right now. But like I said, everything's kind of on hold now while we actually physically move this massive collection. And that involves also a lot of work with adjusting the catalog and things like that. I have a lot of favorite books. I'll mention two for the moment. One is the book Ema Banim Smecha by Rabbi Yisachar Teichtel, who was a Slovakian Rosh Yeshiva who was killed in the Holocaust. And we have a copy of the book there. And he wrote this book while he was in hiding in Budapest, in the Budapest ghetto. And my father, Zichronah Livracha, was also in the Budapest ghetto. So I've always felt a connection with this book. And at home, I have a newer edition. And only when I got to the Scholem Library did I see the original edition that was published in Budapest in 1943, which is astounding in its own right. And any book that was published in Europe during the Holocaust is automatically considered a rare book. But what's even more amazing about this copy, in addition to the fact simply that it is the first edition from Budapest in 1943, is that it has an autographed dedication from Rabbi Teichtel to a friend of his, to another Rav, where he says, I'm giving you this book as you're preparing to go on Aliyah to our beloved land. And he blesses him with his Aliyah, and he says, and then he prays for Am Yisrael to be saved. And this dedication was written only a few weeks before Rav Teichtel was deported and murdered. And the book was dedicated to someone he calls a dear friend, Rav Ephraim Eberts. And we couldn't find out anything about who this person was. We looked in the Yad Vashem records, and everywhere we could, we found no information about this person. And we eventually published at one point a small article. We do a lot of posts and articles about objects in the collection because there's just so many interesting things. We wrote one about this book and showed the dedication. And we just wrote at the end, but we don't know anything about the rabbi who received the book. 2 days later, I got a phone call. Hi, I'm Rabbi Ebert's great-granddaughter. Can I come see you? So, of course, I was thrilled. And this woman came in. She was in Bnei Brak. Rabbi Eberts did not make Aliyah in 1943 when the book was dedicated to him. He made Aliyah in 1946 after the Shoah. And apparently he didn't bring the book with him, or he may never have received the book, because we know from another notation in the book that it was in Budapest until 1970, when it was given to a student of Scholem, Rivka Schatz, who then gave it to him. So that book is a really special one for me. Another example, there's obviously classic things, the first edition of the Zohar and the first edition of the Sefer Yetzirah and all these things, of course, those are obvious. We also have about 1,000 books with dedications from people that gave them to Scholem, including some of them are boring, frankly, but some of them are very interesting historically. Quite a number from Buber, with whom Scholem had a complex and sometimes kind of adversarial relationship with over the years about Zionist politics and about scholarship, and so some of that's hinted at in some of these dedications as well, for example. But another book that's really one of my favorites is a Hasidic book, Tzidkat Tzadik by Rabbi Tzadok HaKohen of Lublin, who died in 1900. And Rav Tzadok's books were all published by his Hasidim after he died. So the first edition of Tzidkat Tzadik came out in 1902 in Lublin. And if you open it and flip through it, you'll notice right away that it's been censored. It's what we call internal censorship. The students of Rav Tzadok took out about 10 paragraphs that they felt were too controversial. Either people would misunderstand them, or maybe it wouldn't reflect well on their Rebbe, etc. And they just left them out. And so they're numbered, the paragraphs are numbered, and so they'll say number 52, and then it'll say number 53 missing, number 54. So, but starting in the 1960s, these pieces started to be published in newer editions of Rav Tzadok. So where did they get these extra pieces from? So we have a copy of the first edition that in the back of it has in it 4 pages of handwritten manuscript by a student of Rav Tzadok, a Chassid, who copied for himself from Rav Tzadok's own manuscript that didn't survive the Holocaust, and he put it in the back of his book. And similarly, Rav Eliyahu Kitov, the famous Israeli author, his father was also a student of Rav Tzadok, and his father also wrote in the margins of his edition the same thing. And based on these 2 editions, the one that we have and one that's owned in the Rav Eliyahu Kitov's family, the various extra pieces were published, mostly by the family and an additional piece from our edition. So that's a really cool book to be able to look up and see, what was taken out by the students.